early 1970s would see several new safety and emissions regulations, such as 5-mile-an-hour bumpers and catalytic converters, causing many to view 1972 as the last year before the American car was ruined. The big Chevrolet was a year old at that time and cost $3,100 to $4,400, with 970,000 sold. Most were 220 inches long on a 122-inch wheelbase, except the longer wagon, and were 3,900 to 4,900 pounds. Base engine was a 4.1-liter 250 straight-six with 145 gross horsepower, or 110 horsepower net, and V8s included a 5.7-liter 350, 6.6-liter 400, and 7.4-liter 454, with 245 to 365 horsepower gross, or 165 to 270 horsepower net. A 454 Impala Sport Coupe did a low 16-second quarter mile and could top 130 miles an hour. Introduced in 1969, the big Fords were a bit more dated, priced $3,200 to $4,400, with sales over $830,000. They were 216 to 219 inches long on a 121-inch wheelbase and 3,900 to 4,700 pounds. The 3.9-liter 240 Big Six produced 140 horsepower gross, or 103 horsepower net. V8s for 1972 included a 4.9-liter 302, 5.8-liter 351, 6.6-liter 400, and 7-liter 429, with 210 to 360 horsepower gross, or 140 to 208 horsepower net. A 429 LTD coupe did a mid-17-second quarter mile and could do better than 120 miles an hour. The new Plymouth Fury had been introduced at the same time, and in 1972 cost $3,500 to $4,500, and more than 260,000 sold. 217 inches long on a 120-inch wheelbase, except for the Dodge-sized wagon. Weight was 3,800 to 4,400 pounds. V8 engines included a 5.2-liter 318, 5.9-liter 360, 6.6-liter 400, and 7.2-liter 440, with 230 to 335 horsepower gross, or 150 to 285 horsepower net. A 440 Grand Coupe did about 125 miles an hour and a mid-16-second quarter mile. The Dodge was similar, from the $3,600 base Polara to the top $4,800 Monaco, selling more than 145,000. They were 219 to 223 inches long on a 122-inch wheelbase and 4,000 to 4,700 pounds, with the same range of V8s. A hardtop Monaco 400 Coupe was a mid-17-second car with a top speed over 115. Pontiacs ranged from $3,700 to $4,700, with combined sales near 280,000. They were 221 to 226 inches long on a 124 or 126-inch wheelbase, most between 4,300 and 4,400 pounds, and powered by either a 5.7-liter 350, 6.6-liter 400, or 7.5-liter 455, with 250 to 325 gross horsepower, or 160 to 220 net. A Grandville with dual exhaust could do nearly 130 miles an hour and did the quarter mile in just over 16 seconds. Mercuries included the base Monterey, the Lincoln-like Marquis, and the Colony Park wagon. Most were 225 inches long on a 124-inch wheelbase, except the smaller Ford-sized wagons. Prices were $3,800 to $5,000, and sales $170,000 for the year. Engines included the 5.8-liter 351, 6.6-liter 400, 7-liter 429, and 7.5-liter 460, and horsepower was 240 to 365 gross, or 163 to 224 net. A 460 Monterey Coupe was a mid-17-second car with a top speed near 125 miles an hour. The AMC Ambassador cost $3,900 to $4,400, with sales under $45,000 for the year. Most were a relatively small 211 inches long on a 122-inch wheelbase, weighing 3,600 to 4,000 pounds. Available with a 5-liter 304, 5.9-liter 360, or 6.6-liter 401, with 210 to 330 gross horsepower, or 150 to 225 horsepower net. A 401 SST did the quarter mile in less than 16 seconds and could exceed 130 miles an hour. Oldsmobile's 88 and 98 ranged from $4,000 to $5,100, with sales over $375,000. On a 122 or 127-inch wheelbase, they were 222 or 228 inches long and 4,300 to 4,700 pounds, powered by either a 5.7-liter 350 or 7.5-liter 455, with 240 to 320 gross horsepower, or 160 to 250 net. A Delta 88 Rocket 455 could do 125 miles an hour and a mid-16-second quarter mile. Big Buicks were also 222 to 228 inches long on a 124 or 127-inch wheelbase, weighing 4,400 to 5,100 pounds, and cost $4,000 to $5,100 for sales over $420,000. Also with a 5.7-liter 350 or 7.5-liter 455, but with 230 to 330 gross horsepower, or 150 to 250 net. An Electra 225 did a 17-second quarter mile with a top speed near 125 miles an hour. Chrysler sales were over $200,000 for the year, with prices from $4,100 to $5,400. Most were 224 inches long on a 124-inch wheelbase, with weight between 4,200 and 4,800 pounds. They could be had with a 5.9-liter 360, 6.6-liter 400, or 7.2-liter 440, with 250 to 375 gross horsepower, or 175 to 225 net, for a high 16-second quarter mile and a top speed near 120. Cadillacs ranged from $5,800 for a Calais to $12,000 for a 75. Combined sales were near $270,000. The popular DeVille was 225 inches long on a 130-inch wheelbase and about 4,900 pounds. The 60 Special was slightly bigger. All standard Cadillacs used a 7.7-liter 472 with 345 gross horsepower, or 220 horsepower net. A Coupe DeVille did 120 miles an hour and a mid-17-second quarter mile. The Imperial LeBaron ran from $6,600 to $6,800, with less than 16,000 sold. At 230 inches long on a 127-inch wheelbase, weight was around 5,000 pounds. The 7.2-liter 440 had 335 horsepower gross, or 225 net, for speeds near 120 and a high 17-second quarter mile. Lincoln's Continental started around $7,100 to $7,300, with sales under $50,000 for the year. 225 inches long on a 127-inch wheelbase, they were over 5,000 pounds. The 7.5-liter 460 had 340 to 360 horsepower gross, or 212 to 224 horsepower net, making for a quarter mile just over 18 seconds, and a top speed near 120. From Britain, Vauxhall's Cresta PC ran through 1972, with nearly 55,000 having been made. On a 108-inch wheelbase, they were 187 inches long and 2,800 pounds, and prices had climbed over 1,500 pounds. The 3.3-liter straight six had 140 gross horsepower, or 123 net, for a top speed of 100 miles an hour. The Austin 3-liter ran until 1971, 186 inches long on a 116-inch wheelbase, weighing more than 3,300 pounds. The straight six had 124 horsepower net, top speed was just over 105, and the quarter mile took 19.5 seconds. The Rover P6 Series 2 of 1970 was 180 inches long on a 104-inch wheelbase and 2,800 to 2,900 pounds, with either a 2-liter 4 with 99 to 124 horsepower net, or an 181 horsepower 3.5-liter V8, which could do more than 115 miles an hour and did a mid-17-second quarter mile. Jaguar introduced the XJ12 for 1972, available on a 109-inch wheelbase and 190 inches long, or on a 113-inch wheelbase and 194 inches long, weighing nearly 4,000 pounds. The 5.3-liter V12 produced 309 horsepower gross, or 266 horsepower net, for a high 15-second quarter mile and a top speed over 140. The Bentley T1 was typically 204 inches long on a 120-inch wheelbase and 4,700 pounds. Its 6.8-liter V8 had approximately 200 horsepower net for a mid-17-second quarter mile and more than 115 miles an hour. It was essentially the same car as the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, and both came in a long version that was 208 inches long on a 124-inch wheelbase and nearly 5,000 pounds, making them slightly slower. The French Peugeot 504 of 1972 was powered by either a 97 net horsepower 2-liter or a 64 horsepower 2.1-liter diesel. The sedan was 177 inches long on a 108-inch wheelbase and 2,700 pounds. It was capable of doing more than 100 miles an hour with a high 18-second quarter mile. The Renault 16 was 167 inches long on a 106-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,200 pounds. Its 1.6-liter 4 produced 70 to 89 horsepower net, meaning the sporty TS did the quarter mile in under 19 seconds and could nearly do 105 miles an hour. Simca became Chrysler of Europe with the 160 and 180 of 1970. They were 176 inches long on a 105-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,300 to 2,400 pounds, with either a 1.6 or 1.8-liter 4 with 79 or 96 horsepower net, for a top speed of 105 miles an hour and a low 18-second quarter mile. Citroën DS production ended in 1975 after nearly 1.5 million were made, 172 inches long on a 123-inch wheelbase and weighing 2,900 pounds. The last few years included a fuel-injected 2.3-liter with 139 horsepower net for a mid-17-second quarter mile and a top speed over 115 miles an hour. In Germany, the NSU RO80 was 188 inches long on a 113-inch wheelbase and 2,800 pounds, powered by a 1-liter twin-rotor Wankel engine, producing 113 horsepower net for a mid-19-second quarter mile and a top speed near 115. Ford's new Granada of 1972 was 180 inches long on a 109-inch wheelbase and 2,500 to 3,000 pounds. Engines included a 74 net horsepower 1.7-liter V4, a 98 horsepower 2-liter straight 4, and either a 2.3-liter or 3-liter V6 with 107 or 136 horsepower. A 3000 GT could do the quarter mile in under 18 seconds and could exceed 110 miles an hour. Opel's Admiral and Diplomat were mostly 194 inches long on a 112-inch wheelbase and 3,300 to 3,700 pounds, with either a 2.8-liter straight 6 with 177 net horsepower or a 227 horsepower 5.4-liter 327, making it a mid-16-second car with an 130 mile an hour top speed. The big Mercedes-Benz 300 SEL of 1972 was 197 inches long on a 112-inch wheelbase and was 3,700 to 3,900 pounds, most with 197 net horsepower 3.5-liter straight 6, but one could opt for a 6.3-liter 387 cubic inch V8 with 247 horsepower. The V8 could do a low 15-second quarter mile and 135 miles an hour. In Italy, the Lancia 2000 Berlina was made from 1971 to 1974, selling just under 15,000. Length was 182 inches long on a 104-inch wheelbase, and weight 2,700 pounds. It was powered by a 113 net horsepower Boxer 4 for a quarter mile just under 18 seconds and a top speed near 110. Fiat's 130 sold more than 15,000 over its run. It was 187 inches long on a 107-inch wheelbase and 3,300 to 3,500 pounds. Initially with a 138 net horsepower 2.9-liter V6, upgrading to a 3.2-liter with 162 horsepower for a high 16-second quarter mile and a top speed near 120. The De Tomaso Deauville of 1971 was 192 inches long on a 109-inch wheelbase and 4,100 pounds, powered by a Ford 351 Cleveland with 325 gross horsepower for a mid-15-second quarter mile and a top speed over 145. ISO made the Fidia until 1975, but less than 200 were made. It was 196 inches long on a 112-inch wheelbase and 3,600 pounds. Also with a 351 Cleveland, it could do 150 miles an hour and the quarter mile in the high 14s. The Czech Tatra T603 of 1973 was on a 108-inch wheelbase, was 199 inches long, and 3,100 pounds, powered by a rear-engine 2.5-liter V8 with 104 horsepower. Some Soviet officials might have been seen in the ZIL 114, rather large at 247 inches long on a 148-inch wheelbase and 7,000 pounds, with a 7-liter 425 cubic inch V8 producing 296 horsepower for a top speed that was near 120. The Swiss Monteverdi high-speed 375-4 was 209 inches long on a 125-inch wheelbase and 4,200 pounds, powered by a 7.2-liter Chrysler 440 with 335 gross horsepower. Top speed was over 145, and it could do a low 15-second quarter mile. In Sweden, Volvo offered the 164, stretched to 187 inches long on a 106-inch wheelbase and weighing 3,200 pounds. The 3-liter V6 had 143 horsepower gross, or 128 net, and top speed was near 120. The first-generation Ford Fairlane of Australia ran until 1972, 196 inches long on a 116-inch wheelbase, and 3,100 to 3,500 pounds. Engines were a 4.1-liter 250 straight-six, 5-liter 302, or 5.8-liter 351, with up to 250 gross horsepower. The quarter mile came in under 16 seconds, with a top speed over 110. And the Chrysler CH was 197 inches long on a 115-inch wheelbase and 3,400 to 3,600 pounds, with either a 4.3-liter 265 Hemi 6 with 240 gross horsepower or a 5.9-liter 360 V8 with 255 horsepower. The V8 was more than a second quicker, doing the quarter mile in just over 16 seconds, with a top speed over 120. From Japan, the Toyota Crown was on a 106-inch wheelbase and 184 inches long, weighing 2,800 to 3,000 pounds, most using either a 2-liter inline-4 or a 2-liter inline-6 for 97 or 104 horsepower gross, although a bigger 2.3 or 2.6-liter 6 may have been available in some markets, such as the U.S., where prices started at $3,700, and the 2.6-liter produced 122 gross horsepower. A test model costing $4,300 did the quarter mile in the high 19s, topped out over 90, and averaged 16 miles per gallon. The Mazda Luce of 1973 could also be known as the 929, if powered by the 1.8-liter with 109 gross horsepower. Or if it had the 1.2-liter rotary, it could be an RX-4 with 118 to 128 horsepower, depending on the market. It was 167 to 170 inches long on a 99-inch wheelbase, weighing 2,200 to 2,400 pounds. The 4-cylinder model did a mid-17-second quarter mile and could nearly reach 105 miles an hour. Mitsubishi's long-running Debonair was 184 inches long on a 106-inch wheelbase and 2,800 pounds. The 2-liter engine made 118 to 128 gross horsepower, and it could exceed 100 miles an hour with a quarter mile in the high 18s. The new Nissan Cedric of 1971 was 185 inches long on a 106-inch wheelbase, weighing 2,700 to 3,000 pounds. Engine choices included 138 gross horsepower 2.6-liter 6, 113 horsepower 2-liter 6, a 91 horsepower 2-liter 4, and a 59 horsepower 2-liter diesel. The Big 6 was a mid-17-second car with a top speed near 110, all in a segment which would very soon be viewed in a different light. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.
Mm-hmm.